All right. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining your hour with APA Virginia. And let me go ahead and start sharing my screen. All right. Your Hour with APA Virginia is hosted on the fourth Monday of every month from noon to 1 p.m. Going to give everyone a minute to get logged in and get settled. Thank you again for joining our webinar today. Before we get started, we wanted to remind you of a few couple of exciting things APA Virginia has planned at the moment and a few housekeeping items. So APA Virginia is still accepting session proposals for the 2021 conference, as well as award nominations for our annual award ceremony. Please visit apavirginia.com, which is this website right here, for more information. As we do every month, development and implementation of a regional environmental strategic plan will be recorded and posted to our YouTube page by the end of the day. We encourage you to visit our YouTube and see past webinars or share it with friends and colleagues. As a reminder, we will hold all questions until the end, but as the webinar is going on, please type your questions in the Q&A box on your dashboard, and we will answer them at the end in the order in which they came in. Again, thank you to the Berkeley Group, which is happens to be our two presenters today, for making this webinar series possible. We are always looking for new webinars, presenters, or topics. So if you have one you would like us to look into, please email us at admin@apavirginia.com. This month's webinar, Development and Implementation of a Regional Environmental Strategic Plan, is hosted by Denise Nelson. Denise Nelson is a civil environmental engineer, certified floodplain manager, envision sustainability professional, and a lead AP. She has 18 years experience in design and application of best practices for water, wastewater, and stormwater systems and sustainable development. Her experience includes large and small firms in the US and New Zealand, and she is currently an environmental engineer at the Berkeley Group. Mrs. Nelson received her Bachelor's of Science degree in Civil Engineering from Virginia Tech, go Hokies, and her Master of Science degree in Environmental Engineering from the University of Cincinnati. She is on the board of the Mid-Atlantic chapter of the American Public Works Association and is active in sustainability communities for the American Society of Civil Engineers and Virginia Water Environment Association. Up next, we have Luke Peters. Luke joined the Berkeley Group's Environmental Division in 2021 after completing an internship during the summer of 2019. He holds a bachelor's in biomedical engineering from the Virginia Commonwealth University and a master's of public administration from the Evans School at the University of Washington. He has experience ranging from customer relations and sales to programming and 3D drafting and design, and now focuses on environmental policy and public finance. Projects he's worked on include analyzing financial data for Washington State's water and sewer districts and creating key performance indicators for determining successful park and open space activation for King County parks. Luke enjoys hiking, weightlifting, woodworking, and mycology, and is passionate about conservation, landscaping, and Virginia's native plants. At this time, I'll go ahead and mute myself and turn everything over to our presenters.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Denise Nelson, glad to be here with you. And I'm very excited to share this story with you about the development and implementation of an environmental services strategic plan for the George Washington Regional Commission. This work was funded in part by the Virginia Coastal Zone Management Program through a grant from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration under the Coastal Zone Management Act of 1972. I'm going to let Luke kick us off.
Thanks, Denise. Yeah, I'm going to be giving you guys most of the background on the project. So the George Washington Regional Commission is Planning District Commission 16. It was established by the General Assembly for the region, comprising Fredericksburg, the counties of Caroline, King George, Spotsylvania, and Stafford, and their incorporated towns of Bowling Green and Port Royal. The PDC's area drains to the Potomac, the Rappahannock, the Mattaponi, North Anna, and the Pamunkey Rivers, their tributaries, and then eventually to the Chesapeake Bay. The George Washington region is home to approximately 300,000 residents, and PDC 16 is the fourth largest and fastest growing of the 21 planning districts. The rates of development, conservation, and implementation of environmental programs vary widely across their member localities. Denise, you got me on the next slide? Okay. And GAWRC has already led several successful environmental planning efforts in the recent years. However, they've sometimes been piecemeal and reactive and have occasionally missed key partners and opportunities to do a larger strategic direction for regional efforts. Their role in regional environmental services has been growing though, and with increased support from the state to provide technical assistance to member localities, the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality, administering federal funds for coastal zone management and water quality improvement programs, asks GWRC to prepare scopes of work for annual funding. So the idea behind this strategic plan was if GWRC could conceptualize and implement technical assistance projects serving member localities and generate the required cash or in-kind match, the Commission can bring in federal and state funds to the region in a relatively simple process for non-competitive grants. They hired Berkeley Group to manage the environmental services. And so GWRC and the other 7 coastal PDCs receive annual funds to provide technical assistance to member localities and advance coastal management at the local level. The contracts must include 3 minimum standards, which is coordination, which is that the PDCs should at a minimum hold quarterly meetings with local government representatives directly involved in the management of coastal resources and other stakeholders in order to share information on coastal management issues. We have to provide training, which is that the PDC should at a minimum provide 4 training opportunities related to 1 or more of the Virginia CZM program goals. And there are also issue analysis and special projects, wherein each PDC should undertake at least 1 project during the grant year that helps advance 1 or more of the coastal resource management goals. And the project should involve analysis of coastal resource management issues that are important to the region or to a particular locality. And they should also involve coordination with appropriate stakeholders and result in a product like a report or a map or a brochure that can be included as a deliverable. In 2018, GWRC and the other 13 PDCs in the Chesapeake Bay Watershed received funding from DEQ for watershed implementation planning assistance. The scope included developing the GWRC Chesapeake Bay Watershed Implementation Plan for non-regulated, non-agricultural areas in member localities. And then in 2019, the state compiled and revised the PDC plans to create Virginia's final phase 3 watershed implementation plan. And DEQ recommended voluntary implementation of an assortment of new best management practices in the GWRC region by 2025. Then in 2020, DEQ launched the annual PDC locality implementation program to provide funding to each of the Chesapeake Bay watershed PDCs for technical assistance to member localities to advance nutrient reduction at the local level. And this program is anticipated to continue through 2025. And although the 2020 contracts were identical and prescriptive, DEQ requested PDCs to develop locally specific annual scopes of work for subsequent years. And the strategic plan identifies items recommended for those annual scopes of work. And so the overall purpose of the strategic plan is to bring all of that together to identify the region's environmental service needs, to coordinate the requirements of the related programs, create a list of strategies, and develop a larger implementation plan. The result will be a recommendation for the annual scopes of work for each program over the next 10 years for each locality. And the list will house proposals for projects that build upon each other over time to maximize their impact and return on investment. And for the goals that can't be gotten to because of funding or other limitations, the strategic plan also provides a wish list of those unfunded projects, as well as a list of partners and potential funding sources to achieve every strategy. So coming up with the strategy, we relied on NOAA guidance, primarily planning for meaningful evaluation, preparing to write your strategic plan, writing the strategic plan, and how to write one. And the pyramid uses a modified approach, which incorporates stakeholder identification, stakeholder engagement, stakeholder survey, an overall vision for the program, development of the goals, objectives, and strategies, strategic plan development, the implementation plan development, and then getting the plan adopted. So plan adoption and implementation. So yeah, NOAA has data sources and guidance. There's also APA's guidance on green infrastructure, sustainability, and resilience, which were integrated into the plan. And we got there by first looking at existing local plans and available data, comprehensive plans, zoning ordinances, and subdivision ordinances from local governments. And then GWRC already had a regional green infrastructure plan update. They did a septic system study in 2018, and they also did a regional hazard mitigation plan in 2018. There were also other existing plans from other organizations, the Rappahannock River Basin Commission, Healthy Watersheds Forest Initiative in 2019, the Friends of the Rappahannock River Report Card, DEQ's Water Quality Assessment Integrated Report, and which had 46 stream segments in the region that are listed as impaired and need further study. And then there's also implementation plans for rivers with impairments, particularly bacteria impairments, such as the Mattaponi in Caroline and Spotsylvania counties. So there were a lot of different plans to bring together. We also looked at NOAA's data sources and guidance, and a lot of existing data sets, such as Conserve Virginia's, the EPA's Enviro Atlas, the Virginia Environmental Geographic Information System, the Virginia Fish and Wildlife Information System Service, the Wildlife Environmental Review Map Service, the Virginia Cultural Resource Information System, the Virginia Landmarks Register, and several others. So we brought together a lot of different stakeholders, some of which were local partners and programs, which are non-governmental entities. These included the Rappahannock River Basin Commission, the Virginia Cooperative Extension, the Hanover, Caroline, and Tri-County City Soil and Water Conservation Districts, the Rappahannock River Roundtable, the York and Small Coastal Basin Roundtable, Friends of the Rappahannock, it's already mentioned, the Northern Virginia Conservation Trust, and Friends of the Dahlgren Railroad Heritage Trail. This also included the University of Mary Washington in Fredericksburg and Germanna Community College in Spotsylvania County, which are MS4 permit holders. They also have faculty and students engaged in environmental studies, and they have the potential to partner in a lot of different capacities as MS4s, as researchers, students supporting studies and outreach, and as workforce development providers. And then we also looked at resources from the Virginia Institute of Marine Science Center for Coastal Resources Management, which provides locality-specific map viewers that depict several shoreline conditions, as well as preferred shoreline best management practices along the Rappahannock and Rapidan River corridors. The Institute for Engagement and Negotiation at the University of Virginia, the Virginia Coastal Policy Center at William & Mary, and ODU's Virginia Sea Grant Climate Adaptation and Resilience Program. So there are also state government level entities offering support, services, funding, and other resources. And just a few of them are listed here. In addition to the CZM and Watershed Implementation Plan programs already mentioned, DEQ administers the Clean Water Act, Section 319 for non-point source management, and the Stormwater Local Assistance Fund, or SLAF, which provides grants to local governments for implementation of stormwater best management practices for water quality, as well as the Virginia Clean Water Revolving Loan Fund, which provides low interest loans for implementation of best management practices. There's also the Virginia Department of Forestry, which has the silvicultural water quality program, which includes the riparian buffer tax credit programs, as well as the urban forestry program, including the Virginia Trees for Clean Water program and the Urban and Community Forestry Assistant Program grants. There's also DCR, which has the Virginia Dam Safety and Flood Prevention and Protection Assistance Fund. That's a mouthful. As well as the Virginia Land Conservation Foundation, funds for protection of open spaces and parklands, lands of historical and cultural significance, farmlands, forests, and natural areas. And in the next year, there's going to be a new Virginia Community Flood Preparedness Fund, which will offer loans and grants. There's also the Virginia Department of Emergency Management, which administers the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, which provides funding for mitigation measures following the declaration of a major disaster. There is the Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities Program, which provides funding on an annual basis for hazard mitigation planning and mitigation measures. And there's Flood Mitigation Assistance, which provides funding on an annual basis for mitigation measures related to buildings insured under the National Flood Insurance Program. This program addresses the repetitive loss and severe repetitive loss properties. There's VDH, which has the Indemnification Fund, providing homeowners with funding assistance for repairing or replacing on-site sewage systems or components that failed within 3 years of installation due to the negligence of VDH. There's the USDA Rural Development Single Family Housing Repair Loans and Grants Program, another mouthful, which provides funds to very low-income homeowners to repair, improve, or modernize their homes to remove health and safety hazards. And there's also the Virginia Department of Housing and Community Development, whose overall goal is to create safe, affordable, and prosperous communities to live, work, and do business in Virginia, who has the Community Improvement Grants, which are competitive grants which aid eligible localities in implementing projects that will most directly impact the greatest needs of the community. And there's also planning grants, which aid in development of clearly articulated strategies for addressing a locality's greatest community development needs, following meaningful citizen participation. And then we also have the Virginia Department of Social Services, which provides a wide variety of services and benefits to Virginians. So there's also other state programs which receive funds from the federal government, included among them being the EPA, obviously, who has the Building Blocks for Sustainable Communities program, the Greening America's Communities program, as well as the Urban Waters Small Grants program. There is NOAA's Community-Based Restoration Program, which provides funding for coastal and marine habitat restoration projects. This program supports projects that use a habitat-based approach to rebuild productive and sustainable fisheries. They partner with the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, Shell, and Trans-RE on the National Coastal Resilience Fund to fund projects that protect coastal communities from extreme storm and flood events, while also enhancing natural habitat. And then there's the U.S. Forest Service, which administers the Forest Legacy Program to identify and conserve forest areas threatened by conversion to non-forest uses by purchasing properties or purchasing the development rights and supporting conservation easements. There's the North American Wetlands Conservation Act, which provides federal grant funds to increase bird populations and wetland habitat. And there are also partnership opportunities with the Virginia Silver Jackets team, which brings individuals from different agencies together to facilitate collaboration, share information, and leverage resources to identify and implement solutions to reduce flood hazards. And there are other partners, such as Fort A.P. Hill in Caroline County has been a big partner on this entire watershed implementation plan process, and the Naval District Washington in King George County, and the Marine Corps Base Quantico in Stafford. So the key stakeholders included local governments, environmental nonprofits, soil and water conservation districts, as well as other professionals in the field. And the process identified the key needs of each of those stakeholders and what needs they can fill for others. And through that process, GWRC pinpointed opportunities to leverage partnerships and optimize those synergies among the stakeholders to identify a niche or unique services to offer that are not available elsewhere. So GWRC held 3 meetings to engage the member localities and interested stakeholders. The meeting kicked off the project with a discussion of the scope, the approach, and the timeline. Discussion included acknowledging past efforts and relevant recommendations, the existing plans, all those available data sets, and existing conditions. And the focus of the meeting was to review and comment on a draft of the survey. The second meeting focused on the initial survey results and developing a wish list of shovel-ready and other projects and programs. And then the third meeting included a discussion of the survey results. And then the focus of the meeting was to review and comment on the wish list of shovel-ready and other projects and programs. So engaging urban and rural local government staff from planning, public works, parks, and other departments expanded the focus to a multidisciplinary and multi-beneficial strategy. And then engaging conservationists, professors, and other incorporated stretch goals that at times were in conflict with local government's safe goals, kind of made it a more holistic approach to getting a strategy that would fit everyone's needs. And discussions among these diverse stakeholders really increased the understanding of the issues and the challenges, as well as elucidating potential solutions and pathways to higher goals. And so here we have the results of the survey from 40 different respondents from all of those different local government agencies and different stakeholders. The target audience was local government staff and other decision makers. And it included 10 questions to categorize the respondents by their role and location, to determine their familiarity with CZM topics, and to request recommendations for opportunities, actions, special projects, and priorities. It was online on SurveyMonkey, and requests and reminders were sent out. And overall 40 people participated, including 26 local government staff and leaders from all GWRC member localities, and with the remainder representing interested stakeholders, it's staff from local soil and water conservation districts, nonprofit organizations, and private planning and engineering companies. So everyone was really familiar with water quality, stream bank erosion, public policy, stakeholder engagement, and decision-making topics. And what's interesting is their top priorities were all environmentally related. Restoring and maintaining the surface water quality, promoting informed decision-making, reducing or preventing streamline erosion, protecting and restoring resources, habitats, and species, and ensuring sustainable development. So some of the things that were lower on their list were things like protecting development. The participants offered numerous recommendations for opportunities, actions, special projects, and the priorities that were incorporated into the strategic plan. And now Denise is going to go more into the strategic plan itself.
Thank you, Luke. That was a mouthful, like you said. You pretty much summed up every potential partner, every potential program in the state. And it was a very thorough investigative process where we tried to engage as many people as we could and take advantage of as many programs as we could. We had to just briefly mention them, each one of them here. Full details, of course, are in the report. But we used all of that background information to develop our vision for the region. And then with that vision, we could develop our priorities, our goals, and our strategies. So I'd like to read you the vision while you take a look at some of the images from around the region. Now, we're still working with NOAA guidance, and they recommended thinking about what you want the region to look like in 20 years and pretending like you're there looking at the community. So we wrote, within 20 years, the GWRC region will be celebrated for its high quality of life. Smart growth practices have effectively connected residents to schools, jobs, goods, services, conserved natural areas and habitats, safe and accessible outdoor recreation sites, trails, and waterways, local cultural and historic assets, and we have reduced pollution to make sure the region is a desirable place to live, work, and play. Supported by federal and state agencies, as well as the Regional Commission, the local governments recognize the value and co-benefits of aligning growth and development practices with environmental conservation initiatives. Sustainable thinking was adopted in all departments, leading to greater collaboration and success at creating whole system solutions, which were then integrated into local policies and regulations. The local citizenry played their part by learning about pollutant reduction, environmental restoration, and the co-benefits of sustainable development. They acted on their properties to capture and use rainwater, reduce fertilizer applications, and grow native plants. They supported similar activities at the neighborhood and community scale and backed elected officials in adopting smart growth policies. The move toward redevelopment and higher development density, incorporating green infrastructure and connected to trails and transit, significantly improved air and water quality. Citizens enjoy the health benefits of reduced pollution and increased recreational opportunities. Local governments see a reduction in health-related social services and the conservation of traditional agricultural and forestal industries as economic growth is no longer tied to sprawling developments. Growth in the fields of aquaculture, ecotourism, and renewable energy shore up the local economy. Stream restoration projects reduce erosion and increase resilience to flash flooding and sea level rise. The region is healthier, safer, and happier. As the environment is restored, there is a sense of success and pride in strengthened partnerships and a deepened sense of community. Collaboration, education, and participation are now the norm for this region's continued focus on maintaining a sustainable future. So how do we make that vision come to fruition? We took a look at the Virginia Coastal Zone Management 10 top goals, and we reprioritized them for the region based on the survey Luke had described. We identified the top priorities as resilience, that is reducing or preventing loss of coastal habitat, life, and property. Focusing on water quality, which is a priority for coastal zone management, and also, of course, the Chesapeake Bay WIP. We call the goal number 3 physical features. It's a much longer description: protecting and restoring coastal resources, habitats, and species of the Commonwealth. Goal number 4, sustainable development on coastal lands and access for water-dependent development. And then 5, focusing on technical tools and transfer of knowledge, making decisions based on science. We recognized early on that we were going to have a lot of objectives and strategies under these first 5 goals. So we prioritized the remaining 10, but I'll tell you, we did not have a chance to expand our 10-year vision to address all 10 goals. We came up with a somewhat standard list of objectives for each of the goals, as it seemed appropriate. We didn't want to force any of the topics, but we focused on first engaging the local governments, and then training the local governments wherever they needed training support, supporting the local governments on policies, supporting them on projects, and then reaching out to engage, educate, and empower the development community and also the citizens. We actually originally had these first 2, the last 2 were reversed. And when we presented this to our stakeholder team and the GWRC board, they asked us to elevate the development community and local businesses so they would have a larger role in ensuring this is a sustainable plan over time. We developed these objectives targeting the local governments, the development community, and the local businesses and citizens to make sure that we were focusing on inclusion and equity in plan implementation. In fact, we had one strategy titled Coordinate Training on Environmental Justice, and it was originally scheduled for year 9 in the plan. But since then, we promoted it to year 1, and we will actually be providing that training in July to our stakeholders. And we've expanded it to training on social equity and environmental justice. We wanted to have this training in year 1 to make sure that we're educated and able to incorporate the concepts into all future strategies and projects. So each goal has a list of objectives, and each objective has a list of strategies. So now you're getting a view into our spreadsheet that we can search and sort by goals, objectives, and strategies. And we laid out a 10-year timeline. The columns on the right are the first 5 years of that timeline. And you can see little green boxes that indicate the prioritization. We came up with that prioritization by first looking at the priority goals, the priority objectives, and then deciding how much we could achieve, how many strategies we could achieve each year. To do that, we looked at the funding we were receiving in our existing programs. So GWRC is in the coastal zone area and receives an annual technical assistance grant. And we're also in the Chesapeake Bay Watershed. We receive an annual technical assistance grant. And we know the dollar amounts and the match requirements, and we can estimate what it'll be going forward in time. We could also identify an additional grant. At the time we were creating the strategic plan, we were also applying for additional funds for resilience planning, which is a 3-year grant program. So if we add all those funds together, we know what our ability is to deliver projects. And one really important thing here to note is that if we can't identify in-kind or cash match to meet the grant requirements, then we will lose the $122,000 listed here. So we have thought long and hard about raising grant funds and also documenting in-kind hours from our multiple partners. So with those budgetary numbers in mind, we went back to our list and we could sort the objectives and strategies by the potential funding. And you'll see it's a huge spreadsheet. I've just shown you a tight screenshot that we can sort by year. And so for fiscal year 21, which is the current year, we see a series of 10 or 12 strategies that we're going to achieve based on the funding we have, which is in light green. There's potential funding in orange. We're applying at the time for the resilience grant, which we received. And we were also applying for a Greenways feasibility study grant from the Department of Forestry, which we have received. So this was a great demonstration of finding unfunded priorities and figuring out how to get them funded, making sure we're watching the timing of those grant RFPs. Since we have this spreadsheet in place, there's a couple of different ways to look at how we prioritize the strategies to help us think through the future. Shown here is that in year one, we're going to focus on engaging local governments in the water quality topic. And then in year two, we're going to continue discussing water quality, but now we're going to add on the physical feature topic, which was the protecting the habitats and species and natural environments. And then in year three, we keep those two topics and we add on now sustainable development. So we're deepening our knowledge and widening our bench of experience and expertise. Another way to look at it is to organize by the objectives and the strategies. So you can see that each year we continue to build as you move to the right and downward. So we'll start year one with engaging the local governments on a topic. We'll move that topic in year two to educate them. And then in year three, we support incorporating that topic into their policies. And if the table were to continue, you would see in year four, we would focus on projects related to those policies and topics. In year five, we would do outreach to the planner, the developers, and the business community on those topics. And then in year six, that the same topic would move on to our goal of reaching out to the citizens. And so what we've done is arranged our 5 goals, our objectives, and our strategies over time, prioritized based on the amount of funding we have or we expect. That helped us identify that there are a lot of unfunded strategies out there. Things that we've identified, we've named, and now we would very much like to incorporate them into our programs. So we've started looking for additional funding amounts and partners and programs for the George Washington Regional Commission. So the commission is in charge of the technical assistance, the planning, the studies, the reporting. So we need to identify programs and funding that support those activities. But we also identified a list of projects, physical projects to be designed and constructed for the localities. And so we've identified the second list of potential funding and partners for the physical projects. And the regional commission can still be involved in helping write the grant applications and possibly administer the grants or creating those partnerships with other local entities. But this is a great way to support the localities in going beyond their general funds or their bond funds to build projects. And so the result of all of that work was a 10-year environmental services strategic plan. So we focused on the local stakeholders. Their needs may be different than the regional commissions and planning district commissions around the state. This is specific to GWRC, but certainly The procedure and the reference tools can be transferable across the state. We focused on environmental management, primarily for the sake of the coastal area, and then water quality. We looked for partnerships. We looked for those partnerships where people are already conducting work, so that we know to work with them, or they're providing funding opportunities for us. And we talked with them about recognizing co-benefits and synergies so that we can have the most impact for our time and our investment. In the end, this is an actionable plan. It lays out those strategies over a timeline, and every year we will revisit the plan to confirm that the strategies were complete, to plan ahead for the following year's strategies, and to keep an eye on the strategies that rely on outside grants or partners, so that we can make sure that we are applying for those and lining up the funding and the partnerships so that they are available when we need them. This is where you can find the full plan on the GWRC website. You can download it as a complete plan. You can look at each plan and all the appendices separately. You can contact me or Luke if you have questions. And I would like to say that since the plan was adopted in November of 2020, we have put the plan into action. We have used it to, we've pulled strategies out of it to put into that resilience grant, the 3-year grant, and we are actively addressing those strategies. We pulled the strategy out for the Greenways feasibility study, and we were able to secure that funding. We've pulled a handful of strategies out as identified for the WIP contract in 2020, and that work is underway. And we've pulled strategies out of it to put into the coastal zone management contract that we had to propose now to have funding in place in October. So it's so exciting for us to go through that comprehensive process. Again, Luke described so many research opportunities and data sources and background plans and potential partners and potential funding, and bring all of that together so that it's coordinated and we are being strategic as we move forward. Again, you can find all this information on the GWRC website. And now I'd like to open it up for questions.
Okay, we going to go to the Q&A box on our screen. We have our first question. How long was the planning process and how did the pandemic affect it?
Thank you for that question. The planning process was about a year long. It was actually, creating the plan was one of those special projects identified under the Coastal Zone Management Program. So it was great to engage people over the year. We had our key stakeholders lined up. Originally, we had a committee of the stormwater management professionals and the development professionals that review development applications at the local governments. They were already an established team, which made moving from in-person meetings to online meetings a much smoother transition. But in the process, we identified and engaged several other stakeholders. Now we've included the nonprofits, the soil and water conservation districts, and actually having meetings online due to COVID made it easier for more people to attend and engage. And then beyond the key stakeholders that attended those 3 meetings with us, really workshops to develop the plan, we created that survey and we sent the survey out. So because we were not able to have a larger group meeting or have a community meeting, or go have meetings which each of the county administrators or county boards, we sent around that survey. We kept it open for a couple of weeks and we made sure that we had a good gatekeeper deliver the survey and request that people participate. So we felt confident we were able to include a wide variety of stakeholders.
Okay, here's a second question. Um, no plan survives the first battle. Did the process of creating this plan lead to burnout? How will this plan help build energy over time versus, I guess, soiled plans? I don't know, maybe that's a typo.
Okay. Um, this was a very interesting process, and engaging, I think Luke mentioned it, engaging the local governments with their priorities, and then bringing in some of the environmental nonprofits and conservationists who had slightly different priorities. um, Working through that helped us identify feasible strategies, and really helped us learn from each other. So we could better understand who can do what and how easily it is to get things done. Um, we did take this to the GWRC board in September, October, and November. And before they approved it, they said, we don't want a plan to just sit on the shelf. We are a planning agency, yes, but we want this to be an action plan. We want to see progress. And so first and foremost, the plan helps us with the current programs we have. Coastal zone management and WIP, we expected to get those projects this year, and we had to come up with special projects, regionally specific projects to include in those contracts. So this plan has already met that goal. And then this plan goes beyond that goal to help us identify additional programs, additional partners. And we're already, like we said, we wrote the grant proposal for resilience. We wrote it for the Greenways feasibility study. We've written a BRIC grant we're waiting to hear back on. So we have started realizing we can do more now that we have this plan in place that helps us really be strategic.
Our next question is specifically for Luke. Any Washington state related frameworks or best practices that you would recommend for Virginia, i.e., shoreline master programs, growth management act, etc.?
Yeah, and thanks for that question, Mark. Going to grad school in Washington State was sort of a boon and a problem, because I knew I was coming back to Virginia, and of course, the grad school there was very focused on Washington State policies. But they do a lot of environmental things right. It's just a matter of balancing their view of property rights versus Virginia's strong view of property rights. The growth and the way that the state government controls the local governments as well, how much authority they give to each of the local governments. So like the Growth Management Act has been, I don't know, controversial for some and non-controversial for others. I don't know how that would fly in Virginia. And in fact, even with some of Virginia's unfunded mandates already, there's been a little pushback, because we have urban communities with MS4 permits that are ready to tackle certain problems. And then we have more rural communities that are on board with protecting the environment, but who need and want to do it in their own way. So that's a great question. There are some things that I personally am like, oh, that's a great idea. We should do that everywhere. But that, like I said, you have to balance with Virginia's particular idioms. Even just protecting trees of a certain size in the city, saying that you can't cut down trees is its own battle. And I think a process that incorporates as many stakeholders as possible, including developers, experts, and rural and urban local governments, is probably the best way to develop a Virginia-specific plan for protecting waterways.
Okay, our next question is, did you develop a feedback loop to gauge the success of various recommended actions of the plan?
So the plan does include a review mechanism every year to primarily look at, are we achieving and completing our strategies? And then at the 5-year phase is a fuller, more comprehensive revisit where we see what we've completed and we see what's planned, and we ask ourselves, is that still the direction we want to go? Has anything new come up? Has anything different come up? Do we need to reprioritize or add strategies? As far as feedback on success from our localities or from our citizens, right now we're relying on the continued engagement with the stakeholder group. Those contracts, the CZM and the WIP, still require the coordination and training events. And so we're still engaging with our stakeholders, and we're still asking them for feedback every day. And we were trying to record that feedback as best as possible in a metric that we can capture and report, because I know every November the board is going to ask, you know, has this plan been worth it? Has it been implemented, and has it been successful? And how do I know it's successful? Some of those qualitative things in the vision statement are a little hard to quantify, especially in 1 year or 2 years. So we're trying to capture the anecdotes, the metrics whenever we can, and certainly one of the best metrics is completing a strategy, or another one is being awarded a new grant or finding a new partner. Things like that we will definitely be reporting out on.
Another question, could you briefly talk about the involvement of federal agencies, businesses, and or other groups or organizations and their contributions or participation in developing the plan?
Yes, thank you. This plan last year, we heavily focused on the locality staff and the local nonprofits that were very well established in the area, the Land Trust, Friends of Rappahannock. We tried to invite others. We did not have a lot of direct engagement from the federal government or from the development community outside of a couple of design firms that had a historical relationship with GWRC and wanted to stay involved. We are trying to expand that. In some cases now, we found once we have a plan in place, it's easier to go talk to them and get them engaged in future activities. A lot of the federal funding, as Luke mentioned, comes down through the state agencies. So we focused on the state agency relationships there, but we would like to look more at federal agencies, especially with the high military presence in Virginia and that Silver Jackets team. They're a team that will come, and if you apply to them, they come and do the work. So they don't give you money, but they will help you so you can get another strategic item completed with the same staff capacity.
I think that is it for all of our questions. So it's about 12:55, so we're pretty much at the mark. So I will, hold on, we have something that just came in. Oh, excellent job, Denise and Luke. And thanks to our presenters today. So I'll go ahead and just close this out and say thank you once again for joining us today, and thank you again to our presenters for putting together a wonderful presentation. Again, this is being recorded and will be posted to the chapter YouTube by the end of the day. If you have any questions, please reach out to us and we will get those answered for you. But at this time, I'll let everybody go.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.